Commander Zephyr's 4 arms trembled as she read the transmission from the Galactic Council. The Cathari homeworld was dying, and they had 3 months before their sun went supernova. 3 months to evacuate 17 billion souls from a world that had been their home for 10,000 years. The message was clear. No help was coming. The Galactic Council had deliberated for weeks, weighing the cost of rescue operations against the strategic value of the Cathari people. The verdict was brutal in its efficiency. The Cathari were a minor species with limited resources and technology. Saving them would require massive fleets, countless resources, and significant risk to more valuable civilizations. The mathematics of galactic politics had condemned her people to death. Zephyr stared out the viewport of the orbital command station, watching the ancient star that had nurtured her civilization for millennia. Solar flares danced across its surface like the death throes of a god. The science was undeniable. Their sun was entering its final phase, and when it exploded, it would sterilize everything within 5 light years. Commander, her aide, Lieutenant Voss, approached with another data pad. His blue-scaled face showed the same despair that had settled over their entire species. The evacuation projections are in. Our entire merchant and military fleet combined can only transport maybe 200,000 people per trip. Even if we could make 20 round trips to the nearest habitable world, we'd save less than 10% of our population. The numbers were stark. The Cathari had focused their civilization on art, philosophy, and sustainable harmony with their world. They were not a spacefaring people by nature. Their small fleet was designed for trade and exploration, not massive evacuations. They had perhaps 50 vessels capable of interstellar travel, and most of those were research ships or small cargo haulers. What about the Alliance species? Zephyr asked, though she already knew the answer. Voss's expression darkened. The hegemony has closed their borders to refugees. They claim it would disrupt their genetic purity protocols. The Crystalline Collective offered to take 50,000 of our greatest artists and scientists, but only if they agree to bond slavery contracts. The Void Runners. They want to purchase our children. Each rejection felt like a physical blow. These were the civilizations that called themselves the guardians of galactic order, the advanced species that had shaped interstellar law for thousands of years. When the Cathari needed them most, they had shown their true nature. There is one more option, Voss said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. What option? We've contacted every member of the Galactic Council. Not every spacefaring species is part of the Council, Commander. Voss activated his data pad, showing a star chart that made Zephyr's heart sink. There's a species about 12 light years from here. There. They're not part of any galactic government. Most of the advanced civilizations consider them primitive, dangerous. Zephyr knew immediately what he meant. The humans. Humans were a young species, barely 300 years into spaceflight. They came from a death world that had forged them into something the galaxy viewed with mixture of fear and disgust. They were violent, unpredictable, and utterly lacking in the refined sensibilities that marked truly civilized species. Their ships were crude, their weapons primitive but effective, and their social structures chaotic. More troubling were the stories about human behavior. They formed emotional attachments to other species with disturbing intensity. They had been known to go to war over the treatment of creatures they barely knew. Some species whispered that humans couldn't be trusted because they valued sentiment over logic, honor over profit. Commander, I know what you're thinking, Voss said, but they're our only option. Every other species has written us off. Zephyr thought of her daughter, Lyra, who was still a child by Cathari standards at only 80 years old. She thought of the great libraries of Cathari poetry, the floating gardens that had taken centuries to perfect, the crystal symphonies that could only be performed in their world's unique atmospheric conditions. All of it would be ash in 3 months. Do we even know how to contact them? There's a human trade station at the edge of their space. It's called Frontier Post 7. We could reach it in 4 days if we take the courier ship. The plan was desperate. Zephyr would personally travel to human space with a small diplomatic team. She would throw herself on the mercy of a species that most of the galaxy considered barely above barbarians. It went against every protocol, every diplomatic tradition her people had followed for millennia. Prep the courier ship, she ordered. And Voss, don't tell anyone where we're going. If word gets out that we're begging humans for help, it might damage what little negotiating position we have with other species. 2 days later, Zephyr found herself in the cramped bridge of the courier ship Dancing Wind, watching the bizarre structure that humans called Frontier Post 7 grow larger on their screens. It looked like someone had taken a dozen different ship designs and welded them together without any regard for aesthetics or engineering principles. Massive cargo pods hung from twisted metal frameworks, while ship bays jutted out at impossible angles. That's their space station?" asked Dr. Kine, the expedition's xenobiologist. His voice carried the same dismay they all felt. "It gets worse," muttered Navigator Plex as he studied the sensor readings. "I'm detecting at least 40 different energy signatures. They've got fusion reactors next to antimatter cores next to something I can't even identify. By all engineering principles, that thing should have exploded years ago." The communications array crackled to life with a voice that was unmistakably human, rough, direct, and speaking in heavily accented galactic standard. "Unknown vessel, this is Frontier Post 7 control. State your business and prepare for customs inspection. And before you ask, yes, we know this place looks like a flying junkyard. We built it that way on purpose." Zephyr activated the comm system herself. "This is Commander Zephyr of the Cathari people. We request permission to dock and speak with your leadership about a matter of extreme urgency." There was a long pause. Then, "Cathari, hang on, let me look that up. Okay, got it. You're the folks with the pretty blue skin and the art stuff, right? From the Kepler sector." "Yes, that's correct." "And you want to talk to our leadership?" The human voice carried what sounded suspiciously like amusement. "Lady, our leadership is a drunk expirate named Murphy who won the job in a poker game last month. But hey, he's got a good heart and he's dealt with weirder things than alien diplomats. Transmitting docking instructions now." As they navigated through the chaotic structure of the station, Zephyr felt her confidence crumbling. These humans couldn't possibly have the resources to help her people. They were clearly struggling to maintain basic infrastructure. What had she been thinking? The docking bay was a cavern of organized chaos. Human workers in patched pressure suits moved massive cargo containers with equipment that looked like it had been repaired 100 times. The air smelled of engine lubricants, welding fumes, and something that might have been food cooking somewhere. Their escort was a short human female with grease-stained coveralls and cybernetic implants covering half her face. "Welcome to our little corner of madness," she said cheerfully. "I'm Chief Engineer Tors. Murphy's waiting for you in what we laughingly call the administrative center. Fair warning, he's been drinking, but that actually makes him more diplomatic, not less." They walked through corridors that seemed to have been built by 20 different species using incompatible architectural principles. Humans had apparently just connected everything together and declared it functional. And yet, despite the chaos, there was an energy to the place that Zephyr found oddly compelling. Murphy turned out to be a large human male with graying hair, a magnificent beard, and eyes that held considerably more intelligence than his casual manner suggested. His office was a converted cargo bay filled with mismatched furniture and what appeared to be souvenirs from 100 different worlds. "Cathari delegation?" Murphy boomed, rising from behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single asteroid. "Welcome to our humble establishment. I'd offer you our finest refreshments, but I'm not sure what you folks drink. How about some synthesized fruit juice?" Zephyr found herself oddly charmed despite her desperation. "That would be acceptable, thank you. Mr. Murphy, I must be direct. My people are facing extinction and we need help." Murphy's demeanor changed instantly. The jovial pirate persona fell away, replaced by someone who was clearly used to handling serious situations. "Extinction? That's a hell of a word, Commander. Tell me what's happening." Zephyr explained their situation. The dying star, the failed diplomacy with the Galactic Council, the impossible mathematics of their evacuation needs. Murphy listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification on technical details. When she finished, Murphy was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his comm system. "Tors, get me a conference link with Admiral Chen at Fleet Command. Priority 1. Tell her we've got a situation that needs the big picture view." "Murphy," Zephyr said carefully, "I appreciate your concern, but we need immediate help. 17 billion people." "Commander," Murphy interrupted gently, "I think you may have some misconceptions about us. This station, it's not some backwater trading post. It's a forward monitoring base for the human colonial navy, and that drunk expirate thing. Well, the drunk part's accurate, but I'm actually Admiral Murphy, retired. I run this place because somebody's got to keep an eye on what the Galactic Council's up to out here. The implications hit Zephyr like a physical blow. You're military. But the thing about humans, Commander, is that we don't really retire from caring about people. Let me ask you something. 300 years ago, when humans first made contact with galactic civilization, do you know which species was the first to treat us like equals instead of dangerous primitives? Zephyr's mind raced through historical records. I don't know. The Cathari, your people met our first diplomatic mission with poetry and art and genuine welcome. Your ambassador, a fellow named Wise Star Dancer, spent 6 months teaching our delegation about Cathari culture. He said that any species brave enough to reach for the stars deserved to be honored, regardless of how young they were. The name was familiar from historical texts. Wise Star Dancer had been a minor cultural attaché, notable mainly for his unusual interest in primitive alien cultures. Zephyr had never imagined that his work had any lasting significance. Most of the galaxy thought we were dangerous barbarians, Murphy continued. Still do, actually, but your people, you saw something worth cultivating. You shared your art with us, your philosophy, your music. Hell, there are human colonies where they still perform traditional Cathari crystal symphonies. I didn't know. Humans never forget their allies, Commander, and we sure as hell never forget our debts. Murphy activated his comm system again. Tours, cancel that call to Admiral Chen. Get me a direct link to the Colonial Senate. Emergency session. Tell them Admiral Murphy is calling in some favors, and we're about to find out what human gratitude really looks like. As Murphy began making calls that would reach across human space, Zephyr felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. She was beginning to understand that her desperate gamble might have been the best decision she'd ever made. Outside the viewport, human ships were already beginning to gather at the station, responding to calls that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be an ally of humanity. Within 12 hours, Frontier Post 7 had transformed from a ramshackle trading station into the nerve center of the largest humanitarian operation in human history. Zephyr watched in amazement as human vessels arrived from across their space. Massive colony ships, military transports, converted cargo haulers, and even civilian vessels that had been hastily retrofitted for passenger transport. The human response was unlike anything she had seen in galactic politics. There were no committees, no cost-benefit analyses, no debates about strategic value. Word had gone out that the Cathari needed help, and humanity had simply acted. Commander Zephyr, Admiral Sarah Chen, had arrived on her flagship, the UHS Indomitable Asterisk, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything in the Cathari fleet. She was a small woman with silver hair and the kind of quiet intensity that spoke of decades of command experience. I understand you need to move 17 billion people in 10 weeks. Admiral, I want to be clear about what we can offer in return, Zephyr began. The Cathari are not a wealthy people. We have art, culture, some agricultural techniques. Admiral Chen held up a hand. Commander, let me stop you right there. 3 centuries ago, your people welcomed humanity into galactic civilization when everyone else saw us as dangerous primitives. You shared your knowledge freely, treated us with dignity, and showed us that intelligence and civilization came in many forms. The debt we owe cannot be measured in credits or resources. But 17 billion people is a big number, yes, but humans are good at big numbers when we put our minds to it. Chen activated a holographic display that showed the Cathari system. We've been running preliminary calculations since Admiral Murphy's call reached us. The operation is massive, but it's not impossible. The display zoomed in to show dozens of human ships already en route to Cathari space. We're mobilizing our entire colonial evacuation fleet. These are vessels designed to move large populations during planetary emergencies. We've also requisitioned every passenger liner, cargo hauler, and colony ship in human space. Dr. Kine, who had been quietly studying the human data, spoke up with amazement in his voice. Admiral, these ships, according to my calculations, your fleet has a combined passenger capacity of nearly 20 million beings per journey. 22 million, actually, if we pack them in tight and use emergency protocols. Chen's expression was grimly determined. We'll need to make multiple runs, but the mathematics work. Barely, but they work. Zephyr felt overwhelmed. Admiral, the cost alone is being handled by emergency appropriations from the Colonial Senate. Commander, you need to understand something about human politics. When we debate things for months, it's because we can't agree on what we want. When we all want the same thing, we move very fast. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Zephyr found herself working alongside human logistics specialists who attacked the evacuation problem with a combination of military precision and creative chaos that was uniquely human. Captain Rodriguez, the fleet's logistics coordinator, spread holographic displays across an entire deck of his ship. The biggest challenge isn't moving the people, it's coordinating the pickup. We need to establish orbital transfer stations around your homeworld, organize the population into manageable groups, and figure out how to load 20 million beings without causing panic or stampedes. Lieutenant Commander Okafor, a human engineer with fascinating dark skin and intricate braided hair, had been studying Cathari physiology. The good news is that your people are roughly human-sized, so our standard passenger configurations will work. The bad news is that you require a slightly different atmospheric mix, so we'll need to modify life support systems on every ship. How long will that take? Zephyr asked. We started 3 days ago, Okafor replied with a grin. Human engineering teams are already working on your ships and ours simultaneously. Amazing what you can accomplish when you don't worry about overtime pay or union regulations. What impressed Zephyr most was the human approach to problem-solving. Where galactic standard practice involved extensive planning and careful protocol adherence, humans seemed to thrive on organized improvisation. They would identify problems and immediately begin working on solutions, often before the problems had been fully analyzed. Commander, Admiral Chen approached with a new development. We've received communications from several Galactic Council species. They're concerned about our operation. Concerned how? The hegemony has filed a formal complaint, claiming that large-scale refugee movements violate several interstellar treaties. The Crystalline Collective is demanding that we limit our rescue to culturally significant Cathari only, and the Void Runners are threatening to block our convoy routes. Zephyr felt the familiar weight of despair. What will you do? Chen's smile was not particularly pleasant. We've informed them that this is a humanitarian operation under human authority, and we don't recognize their jurisdiction over our rescue efforts. If they want to interfere, they're welcome to try. Admiral, you could face galactic sanctions, trade embargoes. Commander, let me tell you something about humans and sanctions. Chen activated another display showing human trade routes. 80% of our trade is internal to human space. We're largely self-sufficient, and what we can't make, we can get from the dozen or so species that actually like us. The Galactic Council can sanction us all they want. We've been preparing for that possibility since first contact. The implications were staggering. Humans had built their interstellar civilization, assuming they would eventually come into conflict with the established galactic order. They were prepared to stand alone if necessary. Besides, Chen added, they won't act against us directly. They're too afraid of what we might do if we really got angry. Over the following weeks, Zephyr watched the human evacuation fleet assemble. It was unlike any military operation she had ever witnessed. Human ships arrived from across their space, not just military vessels, but civilian transports, passenger liners, even converted cargo ships. Each captain had volunteered for what was essentially a massive refugee operation with no guarantee of profit or glory. The diversity of the human fleet was remarkable. Some ships were gleaming examples of modern engineering, while others looked like they had been patched together from spare parts and sheer determination. What they all shared was a stubborn capability that seemed to transcend their apparent limitations. Commander Zephyr, Admiral Murphy approached her as she watched the fleet preparations from the observation deck of the Asterisk Indomitable. I wanted to talk to you about something. We've been getting reports from your homeworld. Zephyr tensed. What kind of reports? The good kind. It seems word has gotten out about the evacuation operation. Your people know that help is coming. Murphy smiled. According to our reconnaissance drones, panic has actually decreased. People are organizing themselves into evacuation groups, preparing essential cultural artifacts, even composing farewell songs for their dying world. The news brought tears to Zephyr's eyes. They have hope again. Hope is a powerful thing, Commander, but I wanted to ask you about something else. We've been analyzing the data about your star's collapse. Our scientists think there might be a way to save some of your world's cultural sites. What do you mean? Murphy activated a holographic display showing Cathari's surface. The supernova won't happen instantly. There'll be several days of increasing solar activity before the final explosion. During that window, the planet's surface will be uninhabitable, but it won't be completely destroyed. Our engineers think they can deploy emergency shields around your most important cultural sites, temples, libraries, art installations. To what end? Everything will be destroyed when the star explodes. Not necessarily. We've got some experimental technology, gravitic shields that might be able to protect small areas from the initial shock wave. It's never been tested on this scale, but if it works, we could preserve pieces of your civilization's greatest achievements. The idea was audacious even by human standards. Admiral, that would require ships and personnel to remain in system until the very last moment. Yes, it would, and we've already got volunteers. Zephyr stared at him. You're talking about asking your people to risk their lives to save our art. Commander, 300 years ago, your people shared their art with us when we had nothing to offer in return. They showed us that beauty and culture were just as important as technology and military might. Some of our greatest human artists studied Cathari techniques. Our music, our poetry, our sculpture, they've all been enriched by what your people taught us. Murphy's expression was serious. Art isn't just decoration, Commander. It's the soul of a civilization. If we can save even a small piece of Cathari culture for future generations, then the debt we owe will be partially repaid. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the fleet's reconnaissance division. Commander Tors appeared on the comm screen, her cybernetic implants flashing with data streams. Admiral, we've got a problem. 3 hegemony battle cruisers just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Cathari territory. They're demanding that we halt our evacuation operation and submit to Galactic Council arbitration. Chen's expression hardened. What's our military status? We've got the Asterisk Indomitable and 2 escort destroyers in the immediate area. The rest of our combat fleet is still en route. Recommendations. Tors grinned. Well, we could try diplomatic negotiation, or we could remind them that those hegemony ships are pretty, but they've never actually been in a real fight. Human vessels are built for war, theirs are built for intimidation. Admiral, Zephyr interjected, please don't start an interstellar war on our behalf. Chen considered for a moment. Commander Tors, send a message to the hegemony ships. Inform them that this is a humanitarian operation in progress. They have 2 options, assist with the evacuation or get out of our way. And if they refuse, then we'll show them what human stubbornness really looks like. As the crisis unfolded, Zephyr began to understand that she had fundamentally misjudged humanity. These weren't primitive barbarians playing with advanced technology. They were a species that had built their entire civilization around the idea that some things, loyalty, honor, the protection of the innocent, were more important than political convenience or economic advantage. The hegemony ships held position for 6 hours, broadcasting increasingly aggressive demands that the humans abandon their rescue operation. The response came not from Admiral Chen, but from the human colonial Senate itself. The message was broadcast on all galactic frequencies, ensuring that every spacefaring civilization would hear it. To the Galactic Council and all member species, humanity hereby formally declares the Cathari people to be under human protection. Any interference with our evacuation operation will be considered an act of aggression against human space. Any attack on Cathari civilians will be met with immediate and decisive military response. The Cathari welcomed us into galactic civilization with dignity and respect when others saw us as primitives. We will not abandon them now. This is not a request or a negotiation. This is notice of what will happen. The hegemony ships withdrew 6 hours later. As Zephyr watched them disappear into hyperspace, she realized that her desperate gamble had succeeded beyond her wildest hopes. Humanity hadn't just agreed to help, they had committed their entire civilization to her people's survival. But as the first wave of human evacuation ships prepared to depart for Cathari space, she also understood that this was only the beginning. The real challenge would be moving 17 billion people across interstellar space, while an entire galaxy watched to see if human promises were as strong as human threats. The first wave of human evacuation ships arrived at Cathari space like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. 73 vessels of every conceivable design, from massive military transports to converted passenger liners, all coordinated by human logistics specialists who seemed to thrive on impossible challenges. Zephyr stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the UHS Compassion watching her homeworld grow larger on the main screen. The ancient blue-green planet looked peaceful from orbit, but the star that had nurtured her people for millennia was showing increasingly violent solar activity. Massive flares reached out like the arms of a dying god, and the stellar radiation was already beginning to affect the planet's outer atmosphere. "Orbital insertion in 15 minutes, Commander," announced Captain Sarah Kim, the Compassion's commanding officer. She was a young human who had volunteered to command the largest refugee transport in the fleet. "Your people have done an amazing job organizing the evacuation sites." It was true. When word had spread that humanity was coming to help, the Cathari had responded with the kind of organized efficiency that their culture prized. Instead of panic, there had been careful preparation. Citizens had organized themselves into evacuation groups, prepared essential cultural artifacts, and even established priority lists based on age and health. "Commander Zephyr," Dr. Kine approached with a data pad. "The surface reports are remarkable. Our people have organized 17 billion beings into manageable groups across 4,000 evacuation sites. Each site has designated cultural preservation specialists, medical personnel, and group coordinators." "How are they taking the news about leaving everything behind?" "Better than we expected. The Council of Elders issued a statement yesterday. They said that Cathari civilization is not defined by our planet, but by our people and our culture. As long as we survive, we can build new homes, create new art, and preserve what matters most." The communication array activated with a transmission from the planet's surface. Elder Moonwhisper, the oldest and most respected member of the Cathari Council, appeared on screen. Her ancient blue skin was marked with the traditional silver tattoos that indicated her status as a keeper of cultural memory. "Commander Zephyr honored human allies," she said in the formal tones reserved for great occasions. "The children of Cathari are ready to entrust their lives to your care. We have prepared our most precious cultural treasures, our historical records, our artistic masterworks. But more than that, we have prepared our hearts to see our world die and our spirits to build anew among the stars." Captain Kim stepped forward. "Elder Moonwhisper, this is Captain Kim of the UHS Compassion. We are honored to help your people. Our ships are equipped with full life support for Cathari physiology, cultural preservation storage, and even recreational facilities to help make the journey as comfortable as possible." "You have our eternal gratitude, Captain, but I must ask, we have received reports that other galactic species are opposed to your rescue operation. Are we putting humanity at risk?" Kim's expression hardened slightly. "Elder, let me be very clear about something. Humanity chose to help you because it was the right thing to do. Any consequences we face are our responsibility, not yours. Your people just need to focus on survival and rebuilding." The first evacuation runs began immediately. Human efficiency in logistics was something to behold. Ships would drop into orbit, coordinate with ground-based evacuation sites, load refugees with military precision, and depart for predetermined destinations in human space. The entire process was streamlined to move maximum numbers of people with minimum delay. Zephyr found herself aboard the Compassion for the first evacuation run, serving as liaison between human command staff and Cathari evacuees. What she witnessed during that journey changed her understanding of humanity forever. The refugees were frightened, confused, and grieving for the world they were leaving behind. Many had never been off-planet before. Some were too old to travel comfortably, while others were children who didn't understand why they couldn't go home. It should have been a logistics nightmare. Instead, Zephyr watched humans transform their military transport into something approaching a mobile city. Recreation areas were quickly converted into spaces where Cathari could practice their traditional meditative arts. Human crew members worked with Cathari cultural specialists to ensure that important social rituals could continue during the journey. Emergency food synthesizers were reprogrammed to produce traditional Cathari cuisine. "Commander," Lieutenant Torres approached her in what humans had designated as a cultural preservation area. Cathari families were performing traditional singing circles. their harmonious voices creating the complex tonal patterns that were central to their spiritual practice. Yes, Lieutenant. We've got a problem, but it's a good problem. We're carrying about 50,000 more refugees than our official capacity. Zephyr felt alarm. Is that safe? Oh, it's safe. Human ships are always built with massive safety margins. But technically, we're violating passenger transport regulations. Torres grinned. Captain Kim's response was to log it as emergency overcrowding protocols and keep loading people. The human approach to bureaucracy seemed to be pragmatic to the point of chaos. If regulations got in the way of saving lives, they simply ignored the regulations and dealt with consequences later. Lieutenant, how many people can human ships actually carry? In an emergency? About double the official capacity if everyone's willing to sleep in shifts and doesn't mind crowded conditions. We've transported entire planetary populations before during disaster evacuations. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. Captain Kim's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We've received word that Galactic Council forces are attempting to blockade the Cathari system. All civilian evacuation ships are to continue their operations as planned. Military escorts will handle any interference. Through the viewport, Zephyr could see human warships taking up defensive positions around the evacuation fleet. They were smaller than the massive Galactic Council vessels, but there was something about their movement patterns and energy signatures that suggested they were far more dangerous than they appeared. Commander Zephyr, Captain Kim appeared in the cultural preservation area, moving through the space with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to command. I wanted to keep you informed about the tactical situation. 3 council species have combined forces to try to stop our evacuation operation. What will happen? Honestly, probably nothing. Council species have big, impressive ships, but they're designed for intimidation and policing, not actual combat. Human warships are built by a species that spent most of its history fighting wars. If they want a confrontation, they'll get one they won't enjoy. Kim activated her personal data pad, showing a tactical display of the system. But that's not what I'm really worried about. We're getting reports that some council species are spreading propaganda about this operation. They're claiming that humans are using the Cathari crisis to expand our sphere of influence, that we're planning to use your people as soldiers or slaves. The accusation was so absurd that Zephyr almost laughed. That's ridiculous. Anyone who knows humans would realize that we're too emotionally attached to other species to ever harm them, yes. But most of the galaxy doesn't really understand humans. They see our willingness to go to war over principles as evidence that we're dangerous and untrustworthy. The irony was painful. Humanity's greatest strength, their unwavering loyalty to their allies, was being portrayed as a threat to galactic stability. Captain, what can we do? Keep doing what we're doing. Save your people, preserve your culture, and let our actions speak for themselves. The galaxy will eventually figure out what humans are really like. The evacuation operation continued for weeks, each run transporting hundreds of thousands of Cathari to safety in human space. But as the operation progressed, Zephyr began to understand the true scope of what humanity was attempting. It wasn't just about moving refugees. Human colonies across their space were being rapidly expanded to accommodate 17 billion new residents. Entire planets were being prepared with Cathari-compatible ecosystems. Cities were being built using architectural principles that would make her people feel at home. Agricultural systems were being established to grow traditional Cathari foods. Commander, Admiral Chen contacted her during the 5th evacuation run. I wanted to update you on our resettlement preparations. We've identified 47 worlds in human space that can support Cathari colonization. We're also establishing cultural preservation centers where your greatest artists and scholars can continue their work. Admiral, the cost of all this is being handled by emergency appropriations and voluntary contributions. Commander, you need to understand something about human economics. When we decide something is important, money stops being an obstacle. We've got entire industries retooling their production to support Cathari resettlement. The scale was breathtaking. Humanity was essentially restructuring their entire colonial infrastructure to accommodate a refugee population that would increase human space's total population by nearly 40%. But why? Why go to such lengths for people you barely know? Chen was quiet for a moment. Commander, do you know what the first Cathari cultural exchange taught us? No. That intelligence and wisdom weren't measured by technological advancement or military power. Your people showed us art that could make our strongest warriors weep with beauty, philosophy that could explain concepts our greatest minds had never considered, and social systems that could create harmony without oppression. You taught us that civilization is measured by how you treat others, not by how much you can conquer. The Admiral's voice carried a weight of genuine emotion. When humans reached for the stars, we were afraid we'd find nothing but predators and competitors. Your people showed us that the galaxy could hold friends, allies, and teachers. We won't forget that lesson, and we won't abandon the people who taught it to us. As the evacuation operation entered its final phases, Zephyr received word that made her hearts race with excitement. The experimental gravitic shield project was proceeding ahead of schedule. Human engineers, working with volunteer cultural specialists, had identified 17 sites of supreme cultural importance that might be preserved through the stellar explosion. Commander, Dr. Martinez, the project's chief engineer, contacted her from the planet's surface. We've successfully deployed shields around the Crystal Gardens, the Archive of Eternal Songs, the Temple of First Light, and 14 other sites. The technology is completely untested at this scale, but if it works, future generations of Cathari will be able to visit these places and connect with their heritage. Dr. Martinez, what are the odds of success? Honestly, maybe 30%. But Commander, your people welcomed us to the galaxy with open hearts when others saw us as dangerous primitives. 30% odds of preserving your greatest cultural treasures seems like a reasonable risk to take. The final evacuation ships departed Cathari space just 18 hours before the star reached critical instability. As Zephyr watched her homeworld disappear from the viewports of the last transport, she realized that humanity had accomplished the impossible. 17 billion people, transported across interstellar space, with minimal casualties and remarkable efficiency. But more than that, they had done it while preserving hope, dignity, and cultural identity. Cathari refugees weren't arriving in human space as desperate supplicants. They were arriving as honored guests, with homes prepared, jobs available, and communities ready to welcome them. As the final ship cleared the system's edge, the ancient star that had given life to Cathari civilization began its death throes. But its people lived, and with them, the culture and wisdom that had once welcomed a young species called humanity into the vast community of galactic civilization. The stellar explosion that destroyed the Cathari homeworld could be seen from halfway across the galaxy. When their ancient star finally collapsed and exploded outward in a burst of energy that briefly outshone entire star clusters, it marked the end of a world that had been home to an entire civilization for 10,000 years. But it also marked the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. Zephyr stood in the observation lounge of New Cathari Station, watching human construction ships put the finishing touches on what would become the new capital of her dispersed people. The station orbited Haven, a beautiful world in the outer reaches of human space that had been terraformed specifically for Cathari settlement. Below them, the planet's surface showed the blue-green hues that her people favored, with carefully cultivated crystal formations that would support their traditional art forms. Commander, Admiral Chen joined her at the viewport. The final casualty reports are in. Zephyr braced herself. Moving 17 billion people across interstellar space in a matter of weeks should have resulted in massive loss of life. Disease, accidents, system failures, psychological trauma, any number of factors could have turned the evacuation into a humanitarian disaster. How bad is it? 17,000 casualties total, most from age-related complications among your eldest population. Actual evacuation-related deaths numbered fewer than 3,000. The number was so low that Zephyr initially thought she had misheard. 17,000 out of 17 billion. Human evacuation protocols are designed for efficiency, but also for preservation of life. Every ship in the fleet had full medical facilities, every crew was trained in alien physiology emergency procedures, and every transport route was optimized for passenger safety over speed. Chen activated a holographic display showing the resettlement statistics. Your people have been distributed across 47 different worlds, with population densities kept low enough to prevent overcrowding. Each settlement has been established with full infrastructure, educational facilities, and cultural preservation centers. Zephyr studied the data with amazement. Admiral, this represents the largest population relocation in galactic history, and you accomplished it in 8 weeks. With plenty of help from your people, Cathari organizational skills made our job much easier, Chen smiled. But I wanted to talk to you about something else. The galactic response to our operation has been interesting. The aftermath of the Cathari evacuation had sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. The established powers had watched in stunned disbelief as humanity mobilized their entire spacefaring capability to save a species that most considered strategically worthless. More disturbing to the Galactic Council was the efficiency with which humans had accomplished the impossible. What kind of response? Mixed. The hegemony is furious that we ignored their authority and succeeded anyway. They're pushing for economic sanctions and military containment of human space. The Crystalline Collective is demanding that we turn over detailed evacuation protocols and refugee management techniques. Chen paused, her expression becoming more serious. But there's another group of species that's responding very differently. The minor powers, the species that the Council considers unimportant, they're sending delegations to human space. They want to know if we'd be willing to help them if they ever faced similar crises. The implications were staggering. They're approaching humanity as an alternative to the Galactic Council. Not exactly, but they're recognizing that human values, loyalty, alliance, protection of the innocent, might be more reliable than Council politics. We're getting feeler communications from dozens of species that have never had formal contact with humanity. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the planet's surface. Elder Moonwhisper appeared on the communication screen, but she was not alone. Standing beside her were representatives of at least 6 different alien species, including some that Zephyr didn't recognize. Commander Zephyr, Admiral Chen, Elder Moonwhisper spoke with the formal tone reserved for occasions of great importance. I am transmitting from the New Cathari Cultural Center on Haven. With me are delegates from the Gentle Tide Collective, the Artisan Worlds, the Songbird Clans, the Deep Void Wanderers, the Prism Folk, and the Star Garden Builders. Zephyr recognized some of the names, minor species that were technically part of galactic civilization but held little political power. They were artists, philosophers, explorers, and peaceful traders. The kind of species that the major powers ignored until they needed something. These species have requested permission to address humanity directly, Elder Moonwhisper continued. They wish to propose something that they are calling the Alliance of Mutual Protection. Admiral Chen activated the ship's main communication system. This is Admiral Chen. You have our attention. A representative of the Gentle Tide Collective stepped forward. They were aquatic beings, roughly humanoid but with flowing, translucent skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Honored humans, we have watched your rescue of the Cathari people with great interest. Our species have long felt isolated in a galaxy dominated by powers that value only strength and resource acquisition. Another alien, this one from the Star Garden Builders, continued the thought. They appeared to be plant-based beings, with bark-like skin and leaves instead of hair. The Galactic Council treats species like ours as sources of resources or curiosities. When we face crises, we are offered minimal aid at maximum cost. When we prosper, our achievements are claimed by more powerful species. The Songbird Clan representative, a graceful being with feathered skin and musical speech patterns, added their voice to the growing chorus. But humanity has shown us something different. You risked war with the Council powers to save a species that could offer you nothing in return. You mobilized your entire civilization not for conquest or profit, but because it was morally necessary. Elder Moonwhisper stepped forward again. Admiral Chen, these species propose an alliance based on mutual protection and cultural exchange. Not a military pact for conquest, but a defensive agreement. When any member species faces existential threat, the others would respond with aid and support. What would humanity gain from such an arrangement? Chen asked carefully. Knowledge, friendship, and allies who share our values, replied the Deep Void Wanderer representative, a crystalline being whose body seemed to contain swirling galaxies of light. Our species may not have vast military fleets, but we have technologies, perspectives, and capabilities that complement each other. The artisan worlds create materials stronger than anything the Council produces. The Songbird clans have developed communication technologies that surpass standard galactic networks. The Star Garden builders have mastered ecological engineering that could transform dead worlds into paradises. Zephyr watched Admiral Chen's expression carefully. This was a pivotal moment not just for humanity, but for the entire structure of galactic civilization. The minor species were essentially proposing to abandon the Council system and form a new alliance with humanity as its de facto leader. Admiral, the Prism Folk representative spoke up, their voice carrying harmonic overtones that made the air itself seem to shimmer. Our species have discussed this extensively. We are not asking humanity to become our protectors. We are asking to become your allies. Each species would contribute according to their capabilities, and all would benefit from the collective security and prosperity. Chen was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing the massive implications of what was being proposed. "I appreciate your trust and confidence," she finally said. "But this kind of decision cannot be made by one person or even one fleet. Such an alliance would need to be ratified by our civilian government, and it would fundamentally change humanity's position in galactic politics." "We understand," Elder Moonwhisper replied. "But Admiral, I must tell you what the Council of Elders has decided. The Cathari people formally request to become a protectorate of humanity. We offer our loyalty, our knowledge, and our service to the species that saved us from extinction." The words hit Admiral Chen like a physical blow. "Elder, that's not necessary. Our aid was given freely without expectation of repayment." "Which is exactly why we offer it. Admiral, the Cathari have spent months living among humans, working alongside your people, experiencing your culture. We have learned that humanity values loyalty, honor, and mutual respect above power and profit. These are principles that our people can support." The alien delegates murmured agreement. Zephyr realized that she was witnessing the birth of something entirely new in galactic politics, an alliance based on shared values rather than mutual exploitation. "I'll need to present this to our government," Admiral Chen said carefully. "But I can tell you that humanity has always valued friends over subjects. If we form an alliance, it would be between equals, not between masters and servants." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Chen and Zephyr alone with the magnitude of what had just occurred. The rescue of the Cathari had inadvertently created an opportunity for humanity to become the center of a new kind of galactic civilization. "Admiral," Zephyr said quietly, "what will your government decide?" "I honestly don't know. Humans are good at making moral decisions quickly, but we're also aware that good intentions can lead to unexpected consequences. An alliance like this would put us in direct competition with the Galactic Council." "Is that necessarily bad?" Chen considered the question carefully. The Council system has maintained relative peace for thousands of years, but it's based on the dominance of a few powerful species over many weaker ones. Maybe it's time for an alternative. Over the following days, the proposal generated intense debate throughout human space. The Colonial Senate convened emergency sessions to consider the implications. Military leaders analyzed the strategic ramifications. Philosophers and ethicists debated the moral dimensions of accepting leadership over other species. But the debate was complicated by ongoing developments. More species were approaching humanity with requests for alliance or protection. The Galactic Council was responding with increasing hostility, threatening economic warfare and military action against human space. And most significantly, intelligence reports suggested that several Council species were planning preemptive strikes against human colonies to prevent the formation of a rival alliance. "Commander Zephyr," Admiral Chen contacted her during the height of the political crisis. "I've received word from our government. The Colonial Senate has voted to accept the alliance proposal, but with specific conditions. Humanity will provide protection and support to alliance members, but only on the basis of mutual respect and shared decision-making. We won't be anyone's overlords." "What does this mean for the galaxy?" "Probably war, eventually. The Council powers won't tolerate a rival alliance, especially one that threatens their control over minor species. But humanity has faced that possibility since we first reached for the stars." The decision was announced simultaneously across human space and to all the species that had requested alliance membership. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, 12 different species had formally requested admission to what the human government was calling the Mutual Protection Alliance. But as celebrations erupted across the new alliance worlds, long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements from Council space. The established powers of the galaxy were mobilizing for what might become the largest interstellar war in recorded history. Standing in the observation lounge of New Cathari Station, watching human and allied ships take up defensive positions around Haven, Zephyr realized that her desperate plea for help had set in motion events that would reshape the entire galaxy. The question now was whether humanity's gratitude and loyalty would be enough to protect the new alliance from the storm that was coming. The war that erupted across the galaxy was unlike anything in recorded history. It was not fought for territory or resources, but for fundamentally different visions of what galactic civilization could become. On one side stood the Galactic Council, representing 3,000 years of established order based on hierarchy and power. On the other stood the Mutual Protection Alliance, offering an alternative based on cooperation and mutual respect. Zephyr found herself in the unique position of serving as both refugee and military advisor, helping coordinate Cathari contributions to the Alliance war effort from the bridge of the UHS Indomitable. Admiral Chen had requested her presence during the climactic battle for the Nexus system, the strategic crossroads that would determine the outcome of the war. Alliance Fleet Status Report, Admiral Chen called out as the massive human flagship moved into position alongside vessels from 17 different species. "All ships report ready, Admiral," replied Commander Torres, her cybernetic implants glowing as she processed data streams from across the fleet. "We've got 60 human vessels, 43 Cathari ships, 37 from the Artisan worlds, and support craft from all other Alliance members. Total force strength, approximately 400 ships." Through the main viewport, Zephyr could see the opposition. The Galactic Council had assembled the largest military force in their history, over 800 ships representing the combined fleets of 12 major species. Massive hegemony dreadnoughts, sleek crystalline collective battlecruisers, and the exotic vessels of half a dozen other council powers filled space like a metallic storm cloud. "Incoming transmission from the council fleet," reported the communications officer. The main screen activated to show High Administrator Vexter of the hegemony, his imposing reptilian features marked with the ceremonial scars that indicated his rank. "Admiral Chen of the Human Forces, you have caused considerable disruption to galactic order. Surrender now, and your species will be permitted to retain limited autonomy under Council supervision." Admiral Chen stepped forward, her small human frame somehow radiating confidence in the face of overwhelming odds. "High Administrator, I offer you the same choice. Stand down your forces and recognize the sovereign rights of Alliance members, or face the consequences of aggression against free peoples." Vexter's laugh was a harsh sound that carried across the communication channel. "Admiral, you command 400 ships against 800. Your allies are minor species with primitive technology. This battle is already decided." "High Administrator, you're making the same mistake that every human enemy has made throughout our history. You're counting ships instead of measuring resolve." The transmission cut, and both fleets began maneuvering for battle positions. But as the opposing forces arranged themselves across the Nexus system, something unprecedented began to happen. "Admiral," Commander Torres called out with excitement in her voice, "we're receiving communications from ships in the Council fleet. Some of them are requesting permission to switch sides." The main display showed transponder signals beginning to change, as dozens of ships from minor Council species broke formation and moved toward Alliance positions. Species that had been forced into Council membership by economic pressure or military intimidation were finally choosing their own path. "How many ships are we talking about?" Admiral Chen asked. 47 so far, with more requesting sanctuary every minute. "Admiral, some of these are Council member species that we didn't even know existed. They've been suppressed for so long that they never had a chance to develop independent foreign policies." High Administrator Vexter appeared on screen again, his expression furious. "Admiral Chen, order those ships to return to their positions immediately, or we will consider them enemy combatants." "High Administrator, those ships are exercising their sovereign right to choose their own alliances. If you attack them, you'll be committing acts of aggression against neutral parties." There are no neutral parties in this conflict. Then you've just confirmed that the council system is exactly what we've always said it was, tyranny disguised as law. The first shots of the battle came from council forces targeting the defecting ships. Hegemony destroyers opened fire on a small group of vessels from the peaceful current species, beautiful ships that looked more like artwork than military craft. They had no chance against military-grade weapons. They didn't need one. Human escort ships had been shadowing the defectors, and the moment council forces opened fire, they responded with devastating precision. Hegemony destroyers designed to intimidate civilian populations found themselves facing human warships designed to fight and win against superior numbers. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, the announcement went out across Alliance frequencies. The Council has fired on civilian vessels exercising their right to peaceful defection. We will respond in kind. Alliance directive is now active. Protect the innocent, defend the free, and show the galaxy what we stand for. What followed was not the one-sided slaughter that Council forces had expected. Human ships fought with the efficiency and ruthlessness of a species that had perfected warfare before reaching the stars. But more importantly, they fought as part of a coordinated alliance where each species contributed their unique capabilities. Cathari ships provided sensor networks and communication coordination that allowed the smaller alliance fleet to operate with perfect tactical awareness. Artisan world vessels deployed defensive technologies that could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Songbird clan ships jammed Council communications with musical frequencies that disrupted their electronics while soothing Alliance crews. Admiral, Commander Torres reported as the battle raged around them. The Council fleet is having trouble coordinating their attacks. Their ships have never fought as a unified force. Each species operates according to their own tactical doctrines. It was the fundamental weakness of an empire based on domination rather than cooperation. Council species had never learned to fight together because they had never truly trusted each other. Alliance forces, forged in the crucible of mutual aid and shared values, operated as a single organism. Target the Hegemony command ship, Admiral Chen ordered. If we can disrupt their coordination, the rest of their fleet will fragment. The Indomitable and its escort wing punched through Council defensive formations with surgical precision. Human tactics, developed through centuries of warfare, combined with alien technologies to create combinations that Council forces couldn't counter. But the real turning point came when the experimental gravitic shields that had protected Cathari cultural sites were deployed as weapons. Human engineers had learned from the successful preservation of Cathari artifacts and developed portable versions that could protect Alliance ships from the most devastating Council weapons. Admiral, an excited voice called out from the communications station. We're receiving a transmission from the Cathari homeworld system. The main screen showed something impossible. Dr. Martinez appeared, broadcasting from the surface of what had been the Cathari homeworld. Behind him, Zephyr could see the crystal gardens, intact and beautiful, surrounded by the shimmer of gravitic shielding. Admiral Chen, this is Dr. Martinez reporting from New Cathari. The Cultural Preservation Project was successful beyond our wildest expectations. Not only did the gravitic shields protect the selected sites, but they created a stable environment that's allowing new settlements to be established. The implications hit Zephyr like a thunderbolt. Our world survived. Not the whole world, but significant portions. The gravitic shields created pocket environments that maintained atmosphere and climate stability. We're estimating that we can support a population of several million in the preserved areas, with expansion possible as we refine the technology. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. Dr. Martinez, you've just given us the perfect demonstration of what Alliance cooperation can achieve. Human engineering, Cathari cultural knowledge, and technologies from 6 other Alliance species, all working together to accomplish the impossible. The news of the Cathari homeworld's partial survival spread across both fleets within minutes. For Alliance forces, it was proof that their values could literally work miracles. For Council forces, it was a demonstration that they were fighting an enemy that valued preservation of life and culture above everything else. Admiral Chen, High Administrator Vexter appeared on screen once more, but his tone had changed completely. Request immediate ceasefire for diplomatic negotiations. High Administrator, what are your terms? Mutual recognition of territorial sovereignty. The Council will acknowledge Alliance space and Alliance member rights. In return, the Alliance agrees not to interfere in Council internal affairs. Admiral Chen looked at Zephyr, then at the other Alliance representatives on the bridge. Each species had sacrificed too much to accept anything less than complete victory for their principles. High Administrator, those terms are acceptable with one addition. Any Council member species that wishes to join the Alliance must be permitted to do so without retaliation. Freedom of association is a fundamental right. The pause that followed was telling. Accepting that condition would essentially mean the end of the Council system as it had existed for 3 millennia. Species that had been held in line by fear and economic pressure would finally have an alternative. Agreed, Vexter said finally. But Admiral, understand that this changes everything. The galaxy will never be the same. High Administrator, we're counting on it. The war ended not with the destruction of the Galactic Council, but with its transformation. Over the following months, 17 Council member species formally joined the Mutual Protection Alliance. Others remained in the Council system, but under reformed policies that emphasized cooperation rather than domination. Humanity found itself at the center of a new galactic civilization based on the principles they had always valued: loyalty, mutual aid, and protection of the innocent. But more importantly, they had proven that gratitude could indeed reshape worlds. Zephyr stood once again in an observation lounge, but this time she was looking down at the restored Cathari homeworld. The planet bore scars from its stellar catastrophe, but new cities were rising in the preserved zones. Children played in the crystal gardens that human technology had saved. Artists worked in studios that bridged Cathari tradition with innovations learned from dozens of Alliance species. Commander, Admiral Chen joined her at the viewport. What do you think your people will do now? We'll do what we've always done: create beautiful things, seek wisdom, and remember our friends. Zephyr smiled, watching a group of human and Cathari children playing together in the gardens below. But now we'll do it as part of something larger. The Alliance isn't just about protection. It's about showing the galaxy that cooperation creates more than conquest ever could. Any regrets about that desperate journey to Frontier Post 7? Zephyr considered the question seriously. Admiral, my people always believed that when you cast your fate on the stars, the universe responds in kind. We cast our fate on human honor and human friendship. The universe responded by giving us allies who would literally rebuild worlds to keep their promises. As they watched, a new ship descended toward the planet's surface, another group of refugees from a Council world that had decided to join the Alliance. They would be welcomed with the same care and commitment that humanity had shown the Cathari, because the Alliance had learned that gratitude, once given freely, creates bonds that can reshape entire civilizations. In the end, the greatest human trait wasn't their stubbornness in war or their efficiency in crisis. It was their ability to remember kindness and repay it with loyalty that could move mountains, or in this case, save 17 billion lives and create a new kind of galactic civilization based on hope rather than fear.